You're a poopy head.
We're all human. That means we're stupid and we ruin everything. Pollution, colonization, killing Jesus, the Titanic, the Titanic, the Titanic, the Titanic, the Titanic. No wait, that one's fine. And giving Silento a music career for a couple of years. We can't have a good thing going without finding some way to screw it up, and that includes video games. Even the greatest game series of all time have their duds. Maybe behind the scenes production was a mess. Maybe an idea was executed poorly. Maybe some executive out there just wanted a quick buck. If a franchise is big enough and it lasts a long time, it's bound to produce crap at some point. And if that hasn't happened yet, it will. Just give it time. I'm sticking with what I've played, so a few obvious picks are not going to be on here. Maybe I'll play and talk about them in the future when I feel like torturing myself. I've already got Tomb Raider the Angel of Darkness and Assassin's Creed Unity in my backlog. The material is there for a sequel list, but let's focus on the list right now. Right now, we're riffing bad games that people put a lot of time and money into. Yippee!
Wow, that's a pretty snazzy performance there.
I talk about video games on YouTube, so for some reason, I'm legally obligated to shit on Sonic the Hedgehog every chance I get. There's state troopers outside with orders to shoot me on sight if I don't comply with this law. They just busted down the door. Alright, which bad Sonic game am I gonna talk about? 06. Given this game's noteworthy reputation, I'm at a loss for words on how to even describe why 06 is such a black mark on the series. It's not like there's nothing to criticize. It plays like crap, the game's a buggy mess, the story makes a Final Fantasy reject kiss a dead animal on the lips, it's a mess. If I were to talk objectively, it's technically the worst game in this entire video. But you all know this by now. Anything in Sonic 06 that can be criticized has been for over a decade now, and there's literally no new ground to cover. It's bad. It's so bad that it's good. Honestly, the reason I have 06 so low is because I had a blast with it out of total irony. There's something oddly charming about exploring just how much of a busted piece of software this game is. Nothing works correctly and it's hilarious. It's like somebody took the late alpha of a game and just sold it in stores because they didn't have the time or money to finish it. Though in retrospect, it is unfortunate to see the damage that this one game did to the entire series. You could argue that Tony Hawk's Sonic Boom Boom Sabotage Rise of Skywalker is a worse game, but that just ended up being a cheap tie-in with the then upcoming Sonic Boom cartoon. Sonic 06 was supposed to launch the franchise into the next generation and reinvent itself, only to become a train wreck and stain Sonic's reputation forever. But like any train wreck, while everything is destroyed, everybody died a horrible death and there's nothing of value to salvage. At least the fire looks pretty.
The infusion lab?
Evacuated.
Trainees?
Gave the order myself.
What did you tell them?
I told them to run.
That's all they need to hear until we reach Seattle.
Agreed.
From the studio who brought you Daikatana and On-the-Spot Battle Cancer comes a good game in the form of Deus Ex. Its fusion of FPS, role-playing, and stealth mechanics in the world of cyberpunk is truly unlike anything else, even to this day. Its sequel, Invisible War, is also like this, though the main difference is that Invisible War blows turds. If you want an efficient way to single-handedly ruin your entire game, either have EA publish it or insert a loading screen every 5 minutes. BioWare is clearly the master of this delicate art, but Ion Storm did a wonderful job ruining their game too. Instead of the large, expansive areas you explore in the first game, Invisible War is comprised of tiny level fragments that are all separated by long loading screens. Every single fucking time. I swear you can't walk 10 feet without some sort of loading screen intermission. This makes me want to quit video games forever and start reviewing movies or something. The game just feels claustrophobic. The first proper level is supposed to be Seattle, but it's a glorified series of hallways. You don't even feel like you're outside most of the time, and the rest of the game is just like this. Mechanics like inventory and health management are watered down, and somebody thought to incorporate one universal ammo type for every gun. As in, your pistol, shotgun, rocket launcher, and sniper rifle all draw ammo from the exact same source. Theoretically, that should save on ammo space, but it ultimately just results in combat being cumbersome because it's hard to tell how much ammo you have and how much of that ammo a single gun uses. A lot of the problems with Invisible War came from the developers having to make compromises to get both versions on PC and the less powerful hardware of the original Xbox to be on equal ground. The whole thing had to be downsized to avoid sacrificing the, at the time, impressive visuals and physics engine. In the end, it just made the game worse and certainly didn't help the reputation generation of consoles as competition against gaming PCs. If you want a worthwhile follow-up to the original Deus Ex, stick with Human Revolution and Mankind Divided. The latter in particular may have its problems, but at least it ain't this. Or that shitty mobile game.
You got no stop! I think I gotta teach you a lesson about settlement. Come on!
This coming from a game about motherhood where the subtitle is an anagram for mother and the full title is an acronym for mom. Die in a Fire. Metroid Other M is the exact vision of director Yoshio Sakamoto fully realized. It never went through development trouble, he had creative control over the whole project, everything in the game is working exactly the way he intended. Yet it's all so wrong. This game came out in 2010. Samus Aran's constant mention of the baby Metroid caused the second biggest spike in terminated pregnancies that year, right behind Baby by Justin Bieber featuring Ludacris. There is a lot of narrative problems, and I do mean a lot, but most people agree the biggest is Samus herself. The deadly bounty hunter of the past is now a moron who sucks ass. Freezing in fear at the sight of an enemy she's killed multiple times before, and submitting to the bizarre orders of her former officer who has no idea what he's doing and she has no reason to listen to. It's stupid. A linear story-driven Metroidvania can work. There's countless indie games that have nailed it, and even Metroid's done it right before, but Other M places too much focus on narrative, and as a result, the exploration aspect is gone. The cinematic method of storytelling that Other M goes for will always come at the expense of a more open structure, which for Metroid is bad. The whole game is running through a linear hallway to trigger cutscenes you can't skip, get authorized to use the equipment you've had the whole time, and sometimes killing a boss. It's as uninspired as you can get. My favorite part is starting off with all of your abilities and only being able to use them literally when the game says it's okay. It might have at least been alright for dumb, mindless action if you could use the nunchuck. You can't though, so I hope you enjoy torturing your thumb with the Wii's crappy D-pad and dropping your controller switching between first and third person. I don't. The game sold terribly and everybody hated it, so Metroid died for about half a decade. Nice going.
Railing search.
It's kinda surreal seeing how irrelevant Call of Duty's become in recent years. The games still sell, but it seems like COD's presence in pop culture has taken a dip. Back before kids bought everything in-game with the credit cards they stole from their parents' wallets, it was all about grown men and 12-year-olds screaming at each other on Xbox Live with those shitty headsets. It was a very magical time. My interest in the series started to fade during high school, and Ghosts pretty much killed it forever. I can still remember the game showing off awesome new features like Doggo and the most advanced fish AI since Super Mario 64 back in 1996. The multiplayer isn't all that bad, and it can be fun with the right people, but it's mostly just a less enjoyable version of everything older COD games did so much better. At least it isn't the game's boring, failed attempt to replicate the success of Zombies, or the monumental clusterfuck that is the game's campaign. I don't expect any great philosophical writing from a COD campaign. I go in wanting dumb popcorn entertainment for a few hours, and that's what they deliver. Ghosts, on the other hand, is the video game equivalent of Battleship starring Taylor Kitsch. Do you remember Taylor Kitsch? Neither does anyone else. The campaign has its moments like the opening shootout in space, that underwater mission with the advanced fish AI, and infiltrating a high-rise building, but that's it. The rest of the campaign is among the most banal and uninspired mission design the series has ever seen thus far. I feel like I'm just playing a watered-down retread of familiar set pieces. It starts out like it's gonna be a more family-oriented story about you fighting in a small ragtag team of resistance fighters quietly taking down a foreign enemy, but it ultimately just evolves back into the same tired conventions that COD has no interest in diverging from. That kinda sums up the whole game, really. Also, it ends on a shitty cliffhanger that, along with Shamalama Ding Dong's Avatar film adaptation, we'll certainly see a follow-up to. No.
心配かけたようだな。ダメージが完全に回復するまで身を隠していたんだ。
Megaman's existed forever at this point, so it's only natural that not every game is gonna be good. My entry point for Mega Man was the X series, and when talking about bad Mega Man X games, it's between X6 and X7. Maybe X5 depending on who you ask. I haven't played 7, but I have played 6, and it's pure evil. Just like newspaper comics. There's incompetence, and then there's being a deliberate asshole. The level design in X6 is so bad that I'm half convinced it was intentional. I have no way to confirm this. I didn't make the game because they didn't allow 4-year-olds to make commercially sold video games until Steam greenlight, but that's what it feels like. So many mistakes in this game don't just happen on accident, you'd have to know full well what you're doing to pull this shit. All the beginner's traps, the obnoxious recurring design elements in each level, the awful nightmare effect system that makes already bad and frustrating levels just barely possible to beat, bosses that are literally impossible to hurt with your starting buster. It's almost brilliant in how soul-crushing it is. Every level is absolutely horrible, yet they all have their own distinct pitfalls. Acid rain, off-screen death spikes, randomized teleporting, everything Blaze Heatniks. I can just picture the artist at work meticulously crafting the worst levels possible for a 2D platformer, complete with shades of brown to represent the game's own shit value, and gray to represent how it deprives the player of their will to live, tying it all together with a bad story that ruins the 5th game's ending and screwed over the initial plan of another side series. It's a brilliant piece of anti-art. The Freddy got fingered of video games, if you will. That, or it's just a shitty sequel they slapped together in less than a year. If you have no imagination.
Failure again! Capture him!
Uh-oh.
Video game crossovers. If it's not a fighting game or that Mario Rabbids game, don't even bother. It's probably bad. In particular, 3D platforming crossovers are all crappy minigame collections for some stupid reason. I mean, clearly no one would want platformer crossovers to contain actual platforming. Who needs Mario and Sonic to go on an adventure when they can just cash in on the upcoming Olympic season again? Why would anyone want the iconic trio of PS2 mascots to actually do platforming instead of a bunch of minigames shilling the Chinese bootleg Wii that Sony has all but forgotten about? But let's not forget Crash Purple and Spyro Orange on the GBA. We probably should though. I'm giving Crash the spot, but really, both are awful for the same reasons. They're lame collections of boring minigames that do nothing with the whole crossover idea. That's it. There's literally nothing else to say about Purple. It's bad. It's really damn bad, but not in a way that's interesting to put to words. I could do some hour-long critical analysis on the design failures of each and every single mundane minigame, but I'd bore myself to sleep mid-recording session if I attempted to dissect this vacuous husk of a game. Nobody cared about making a fun, memorable game that crossed over 2 of PlayStation's most recognizable IPs. They just wanted to cash in on the waning relevance of both series at the time. Even as a kid I knew this game sucked. I still played it all the time though because I had nothing better to do. Other than eating dirt. I probably should have just done that. Spyro had the lesser of both games, but Crash goes on this spot because I've played much worse from Spyro. Like this next game.
Wow!
It's just a float, you scaredy cat.
Hello darkness, my old friend. Spyro Enter the Dragonfly is an example of quantity over quality, as in the quantity of technical issues vastly outweighs the quality of everything else. Aside from Sonic 06, Enter the Dragonfly is the most technically broken game on this list. But unlike 06, there's no joy to be found here. Only pain and regret. This game barely works. It's a buggy mess, the frame rate tanks at the drop of a hat, and the loading screens are probably the worst I've ever dealt with. Like, who looked at this and deemed it okay to release in its current state? This is horrendous. The GameCube got the more stable version of the game, but the base game is still bad. It's a clunky, uninspired follow-up to the PS1 trilogy with very little in terms of levels and content. Every level is an oversized nightmare where collecting gems is a royal pain in the ass, though still more tolerable than having to catch every individual dragonfly that never wants to stay still. Pardon me if I just allow J-Dubs, Tashi Station, Ice Boy, and Scuttlebutt to all die alone in the woods, because any platformer outside of Ape Escape that makes you have to chase down the main collectible is cruel and unusual punishment. The game's main gimmick is elemental breath abilities, but they're entirely superfluous and poorly implemented. This game had trouble development, and it really shows. The publisher, Universal Interactive, forced the dev team to cobble something together in less than a year, and as a result, it derailed the entire series for years to come. This game came from the creative minds of Check 6 Interactive and Equinoxy digital entertainment, best known for literally nothing else. Enter the Dragonfly was so bad, it killed the studios after their very first game. Also, the former dev team for Spyro released the first Ratchet & Clank game literally the day before Enter the Dragonfly came out. I shouldn't find that funny, but I do. Very much so.
Alright, what happened? To who? To whom? And your goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
Oh dear god. Andromeda was a mistake. I know everyone pretty much memed the game's animations to hell and back, and yeah, they're bad, even after all the patches, but that's the least problematic thing about the game. Everything else is just as bad, if not worse. The premise of exploring a whole new galaxy is cool, but it's wasted on boring one-dimensional characters and a story that's the writing equivalent of ramen. Specifically, ramen without the flavoring that nobody even boiled in water. So yeah, it's just a solid block of uncooked noodles. It left so little impact on me that I can't remember anybody in the game aside from Shrek from the Shrek trilogy. The whole Paragon Renegade system of the original trilogy is gone, which might have made way for a more nuanced morality system if they didn't replace it with dialogue options that are only a slight baby step above Fallout 4, the same game where 95% of dialogue trees have sarcastic as an option without any context. At least that game's fun to play though, the same can't be said for Andromeda Llama Total Dramarama. You're strung along through weightless third-person combat, crappy UIs, large empty wastelands because Mass Effect is apparently open world now, and a vehicle that made me write a 50-page apology for every bad thing I ever said about the Mako from Mass Effect 1. There's been so much crap behind the scenes that it's not surprising that the game sucks so bad. EA forcing them to use an engine specifically used for multiplayer FPS games to make this large third-person RPG, the BioWare B team being tasked with such a large project, and the game probably being rushed because, you know, EA. I feel like the publisher probably fucked over the entire thing. It wouldn't be the first time they did, nor would it be the last. It could have been the new start Mass Effect needed after 3's ending. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be the nail in the coffin for the series. But hey, at least we got Anthem. Yeah, don't be surprised if Dragon Age 4 never happens. This is just sad. Metal Gear Survive. The game with so little respect for its player, it makes them pay extra money for a second save slot. If there was anything to prove Metal Gear had no chance of thriving without Kojima, this is it. Failure was the only possible outcome with this game. It was dead on arrival. Between Konami destroying any and all goodwill it had left to the point where they're arguably more reviled than EA, and using the Metal Gear name to prop up a game that was obviously just Metal Gear in name only, nobody was asking for another open-world zombie survival game with crafting in a market that's been long oversaturated with them for years. Especially when Survive failed to live up to even the most middling examples of the genre. The game recycles the same engine and assets of the Phantom Pain while tacking on these annoying mechanics where you're constantly going hungry and thirsty faster than any other survival game I've ever played. You'll always be reminded of your hunger, thirst, stamina, taxes, and overdue library books by these goddamn AI pods. They remind me of the ones from Nier Automata, except I can feel my brain cells die every time they talk. The game slowly devolves into babysitting your character not even to keep your stats up, but to make these droning AI voices just shut the fuck up! Your character is so pathetic. They die in 2 hits and any action involving running or crouching drains your stamina. On top of that, you're trapped in an empty wasteland where half of the map is covered in this fog that makes your map disappear so you can't figure out where you're going. Worst of all, the AI is just embarrassing. Place down a fence and they'll walk into it for you to poke them with the stick until dead. Every aspect of this game is nothing but tedium. It's the epitome of a cynical cash-in with no regard for artistic integrity or the player's enjoyment. I wouldn't be surprised if this entire game exists for the sole purpose of some petty executive wanting to give Kojima the middle finger, considering the development team clearly didn't want to make it. As far as I'm concerned, Metal Gear died with the Phantom Pain and that ending they slapped together because they turned in their essay without the concluding paragraph. I have no idea how Death Stranding is gonna turn out, but it's gotta be better than this. The series is nothing but a zombie now, and that zombie is too stupid to just walk around a fence.